Hello, my name is John Holden, and I made this for Halloween this year, which is 2022, and I'm going to show you how I did it. First off, if you haven't seen the version with the lights, the stage lights on, and the music running and everything, go watch that first to see what this is supposed to look like. Here I have the floodlights all the way up, and everything is turned off, and I'm just going to show you how it works behind the scenes. Starting out, the story here, this show is called Herein We Wait. That's herein we, W-E-E, wait. And it takes place in the Los Angeles River under the Glendale Hyperion Bridge, which I live near and find fascinating. I find the river fascinating. And I thought the bridge was cool and iconic. And I was just thinking, what if there's this secret society or doomsday cult or some suspicious community that is hanging out under there, hidden in plain sight and working on something, planning some sort of nefarious plot or maybe delightful plot. We don't really know. But they're under there and we get a peek at what they're working on and we get in and out before they realize we're here. That's the idea. So we're under a bridge here, and this backdrop is meant to be the view from that bridge looking north up the LA River, which most of the time is not too filled with water, but does have a lot of vegetation in it. So it's a place that, you could conceivably walk down there if you wanted to. And that's the idea here, is that where our feet are is right in the middle of the stream. And there's a barge over here that's sort of docked and floating in it. And over here there's a walkway with some other people and critters hanging out here. Also, they're all skeletons because it's Halloween. But also, how are they doing this? Anyway, taking a step back here. So this shelter is, it's a carport, pipe and tarp carport from Harbor Freight. It's 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. It's in my driveway. The walls in here are canvas drop cloths that I just primed and spray painted and then stapled to some 1x2s that are then zip tied onto the upper pipe of the tent. It's each side is two lengths, so where that pillar is hiding the barrier between two drop cloths. It also adds a little bit of sort of architectural interest, so it doesn't just feel like a tent. But then there's no vertical or upright support in these. They're just held down, weighed down in the bottom with bricks, and then sort of run the extra length on the floor. I thought it was going to feel like, a tent in here. You can see the back one, when the wind blows, it moves a little bit, but the others don't sway that much. It also helps, I think, that we're right up against the house on one side and a tall fence on the other side. I think next year I will probably paint the pipes black and put a black tarp on the top, so it's a little bit more theatery, but I was happy with this. These characters are all, as if you couldn't tell, they're all made out of cardboard. It's just corrugated cardboard cut into various shapes and then layered up with other pieces of cardboard to give them a little bit of depth. And then the edges are about 1-inch strips of cardboard that are just glued on with hot glue at a right angle. And then most of them on the edges are also covered with some craft paper to hide the corrugation. Not everywhere, like you can see some right there, but up here is clean. But with the lights off and with all of this painted flat black, it all disappears anyway. This was an experiment. I did a lot of these this way, but then some of them I just kind of ran out of time and left flat. And then some of these smaller pieces are made out of actually 1/4-inch plywood. I just cut out with a jigsaw and then painted the edges the same way. And again, in the dark, it all kind of looks the same. So I think I wasted some time on these more complicated pieces. But it was an experiment, and, I'm happy with how they look. But was the difference in appearance worth the vast extra effort? I don't think it was. Continuing on, we have, again, watched the show video, so you can see what this is all supposed to look like. But this character is holding one of their boots up. They have one boot on and one boot off. And they're pouring water out of this one because they're on this barge and they just they got wet. And that is a really simple effect that's handled by just a pump down there with a pipe that's running up behind the boot and just runs straight back down into this pan. Easy effect, and it makes a lot of really nice ambient sound as well. Over here, this character is static, but the whole barge did move up and down. It sort of rocked back and forth like a barge, like a boat. And that was achieved with just a reindeer motor under here. And it's behind here. You can just barely see it. I took it out of its housing so that it was easier to mount on this bit of wood here. This is just a very cobbled together frame of 1x2s and 2x4s. It's very flimsy and was very hard to balance. On this side, you can see it's even worse, but there's just a gate hinge right here. And so this whole thing pivots on this hinge, and on that side, the motor is pushing it up and down just a couple inches, but it gives it a nice effect, especially because everything is so big. The motion is really magnified, which is good and bad. Like I said, it was really hard to balance. Those motors are not very powerful, so it needed to be really quite finely tuned, and by the end of the run, I had just turned it off because I had to babysit it too much. Most of this on here is built out of cardboard, including this. There's one, this upright right here is another piece of 1x2 that is screwed down to the base, but the rest of this is all just strips of corrugated cardboard. You can see it started flopping over after about 24 hours of this. One of the last pieces, this antenna here I installed, was too much weight, so not the most structurally sound thing, but it is, it's really light, and I needed this whole thing to be really lightweight. This character as well, like I said, is cardboard. There's a little bit of wood here just holding it up. These pieces, again, are just flat. There are some counterweights on the back here, this box of screws, which is the actual box of screws I used to install this whole thing, and I set it there, and I got the weight right, and I didn't want to try to fuss with it, so I just screwed it down to the base. And there's like a brick in this paint can and just some other various hardware just to make it heavier on this side to reduce the force on the motor. This satellite dish, also, if you couldn't tell, is corrugated cardboard. With just this piece is wood, just so it had enough strength to be out so far. And then there's a shelf bracket in there. All of that is just spray painted with chrome spray paint. It gives it a really nice finish. It looks like, it's almost looks like it's covered in foil, but it's just spray paint. Going to this side, I mentioned this character is flat, just cardboard glued together with hot glue like everything else. Their jacket is craft paper that is crinkled up and glued around the edges, just to give it a little bit more depth and some, just an interesting different style. This palette is also made out of cardboard, and you can see behind it, it's on a little support just so it all stands up, but this character actually isn't touching the wall at all. It's sort of floating in front of it. This sign also just cardboard. I projected an image of a real Share the Road sign onto it, traced it out, painted it. This character over here, I also showed you, is cardboard with this what's that called? Double rod linkage, something like that. Another reindeer motor down there without its weatherproof housing, just screwed straight into this upright with some right angle brackets and a parallelogram shape so that the character moves back and forth. This sort of whole armature from the duck all the way over to the hand is just pieces of cardboard that are screwed together. I did a lot of this technique where it's just a drywall screw, an 1.5-inch drywall screw that just goes through a couple layers of cardboard. Here you can see one here. It just sticks out the back, which is, dangerous if you're feeling around, but no one is supposed to touch any of this. It's really good. It holds things together really securely. It's really easy to install. It is unlikely to come out as long as it's not being pulled really drastically one way or the other. It doesn't really, I haven't had any of them pull through the cardboard. And it also pivots, which is really nice for this piece, so that the duck's head and neck and the rubber chicken that they're holding and pulling back and forth can all pivot naturally as the mechanism, which is just in this upper arm here, that is the source of motion here, and everything else just sort of follows it. All these other characters down here are static, just for vibes. Some of them, like this piece, is cardboard. This piece is wood. It's just a variation. I thought for a long time about how I was going to get these standing up. I thought about putting down like a plywood deck and screwing them in, or giving them feet made out of wood. And I never thought this was going to work, but I'm showing you now so that you can try it as well. There's just a piece of corrugated cardboard on the ground. This piece is made of wood, and it's just hot glued down, so it's standing up. And then there's just popsicle sticks that I snipped the ends off so that they were square, and I just glued them in at an angle onto the base and onto the piece. I held it there for a minute or so while the glue dried, and it stands up. These things they're sturdy. They're not going anywhere. Some of them, like this one's made of cardboard. I put bricks on some of them that were a little top heavy. I could have put a bigger base on it, but it just worked out that way. But yeah, these weren't going anywhere. This one is on a sturdier base just because I already had that built for another piece that I ended up not using, and I didn't want it to go to waste. And then I actually made the Dinah's chicken bucket to fit that space rather than the other way around. I'm amazed this trick worked. This is one of my favorite little details, that just popsicle sticks and hot glue. They haven't budged. So let's talk about the technology. So the lights here, which are very bright right now, these are Ustellar brand floodlights. They are RGB LED. All 6 of them up here are all connected on one power line, which is so convenient. So this one is plugged in over here behind the backdrop to an extension cord, and then it just runs from there to the next one and on in a line, and they all work off of one power cord, and it's so convenient. I found these from a video by Van Oaks Props, and I ordered them immediately, and they're perfect. I have them on close to full power right now. I think it's like 75% white LED mode, but they are RGB LED. I had them set very, very low during the show on some sort of like animated loop, so they would pulse between different colors over time. They're controlled by Wi-Fi. They're rated for outdoor. They're great. I'm really glad I own these now. They're so convenient. There are 6 channels of audio. 4 of them are sort of a surround sound setup. I have these speakers mounted on each corner. You've definitely seen these before. These are really cheap Logitech computer speakers that I spliced longer cables onto so they could run the full 20 feet. So this is a pair here. This corner to that corner is one pair, and then another pair is on the other end. And they're all together plugged into a really cheap USB surround sound audio interface that I'll show you in a moment. I composed a little 5.1 soundscape and have it playing over all of them, and they're not very good quality, but they were meant just for sort of atmospheric sound with a lot of reverb. They made it sound a little bit more cavernous in here, which is really cool. If I were doing something where the sound quality was more important, I'd probably use something else here, but for, again, just background noise, these are great. So 5.1, that's 6 channels. There's only 4 channels here. Another one of the channels is the radio. So there's another speaker behind this piece, which you can see right here. It's just sort of taped down. It's, again, the same kind of speaker. There's just one of them sitting right there. This speaker grill is tissue paper, so it wouldn't muffle the sound too much. And then the 6th channel is coming from this little speaker right here, which is just the sound of the welding torch. But also the reverb for the music is playing out of the other speakers that are mounted overhead, as well as like crickets and frogs and water splashing and footsteps and lots of different vibey sounds. Other than the floodlights, there's one other light, and that is this light bulb here at the end of the welding torch. This is just an old IKEA lamp that I took the housing off of and just sort of shoved it in there. And that is plugged into a DMX dimmer pack that is plugged into the computer. So the computer is playing the sound. It's also triggering that light at the same time as the sound of the torch, and they go together. And it also cuts out the radio sound. The idea is that this skeleton is welding a satellite dish to tune a radio. It's Halloween. It makes sense. It's spooky. It's spooky because it's weird. All these ropes here, by the way, are not wires. There is one or two, I guess, real wires in here. The wire from the speaker is just hanging straight down here. And then there's this white wire. The thicker white wire is the actual wire for the lamp. The red and white wire is just for show and sort of wrapped around it. And then this gray cord and this purple cord are decorative. So this gray one is meant to be the cord that's running, sort of snaking all around the barge from the satellite dish to this receiver on top of the speaker. And then this whole thing, it's tilting a lot right now because it's falling apart. But it was, even when it was built, it was a little tilted. And I had this idea that I would just own that fact. And I added this purple cord that's tied to this office chair here to keep it propped up, which was funny to me because that chair's on wheels and it's very lightweight. That's not going to do anything, but good idea, skeleton people. Power there's very little power needs here, which is great. There's one power strip under the barge here that is handling this speaker and the pump over there. And I think that this pair of speakers that's up here, their power cord comes from over there and runs down here as well, and the motor for the barge. There's another power strip over in this corner behind the wall that has the lights and the motor for this character, and the fog machine that's back there. It's just a regular Chauvet fog machine I bought many, many years ago. And then also there's some lights out here that I just have collected over time. This one that I love is from Target. There's like a Happy Halloween sort of situation happening here. Those are also just plugged in with an extension cord over here. And then there's another power strip behind the scenes I'll show you in a minute for the laptop and the dimmer pack, and all of that just runs off of one extension cord that is plugged in the garage. And like I said, it all runs overhead. I kept it really clean. I was really proud of the power management. So now let's head back behind the scenes and just lift this up here. The laptop is here, and I can show you it's plugged into a USB hub, which is then plugged into this DMX interface, as well as my 5.1 audio interface is just hanging right there. It's very lightweight, so that was fine. And then you can see the 3 stereo plugs coming out of that go to the 6 channels of audio on extension cords just running up around the walls. And then the DMX interface here is plugged into this dimmer pack, which is what handles the welding torch. I think this particular one is discontinued, but I'm sure other things exist like it. The idea is you can plug any dimmable light or anything that just takes wall power into it, and then use DMX to send variable amounts of power to those plugs. It's really handy for a lot of things. And then the laptop was running Ableton Live, which is where I wrote the soundtrack and played it out of the multi-channel sound card. Ableton Live is also sending MIDI to QLC Plus, which is DMX software that then sends signal to the DMX interface, which turned the torch lamp on and off. I might do another video about how that works, because I was really proud of it. There's a lot of generative things happening in the triggering of animal sounds and the music, and I thought it was pretty cool. So maybe more on that. The heron is sort of the unofficial symbol of the LA River, so I had to have a heron in here. This is also just made out of plywood. Not much to it, but I like the way it looks. And it's positioned here so that it's meant to be kind of the last thing you see as you're walking out. Maybe you don't even notice it coming in, because that is sort of what they do. They're sort of mysterious. They sort of just wait around, herein, you might say, and then they stand very still, and then they strike their prey when the moment is right. So they're kind of a symbol of these people. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching this very long video. I've never done this sort of vlog style video before. I hope it was useful or interesting, or you learned something. I have learned so much from YouTube. I couldn't have done any of this without watching lots and lots of YouTube. So I wanted to share my knowledge. Okay. Goodbye.